Russia announced today that it will load uranium fuel into Iran's first nuclear power plant at Bushehr next week. This could lead to a nuclear weapon. It is a massive security threat that could invite an Israeli response. It could also drive oil prices sky high and utterly wreck the world economy. Joining us to talk about all this, CNBC contributor and energy analyst John Kilduff, and Frank Gaffney, president of the Center for Security Policy and former Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Policy under President Reagan. Frank Gaffney, were you surprised to read that Russia is offloading this uranium fuel, which could be enriched, into a weapon?
Larry, the only real surprise is that it's taken this long to do it. It's been in the works for years. It's been delayed a number of times. The Obama administration, I think, had been trying to get the Russians to postpone it yet again on the basis that, we've reset our relationship with the Russians. Turns out it's been a one-way street. The Russians are very much involved in business as usual, including with the Iranians. And I'm afraid that this is going to be a kind of high Richter scale tectonic shift in the strategic sense, and it will have very far-reaching repercussions. We can only speculate about them right now.
Repercussions regarding a nuclear weapon from Iran. Is that what's happened here?
Well, it almost certainly will be a great leap forward for the nuclear ambitions that Iran has had for 20-odd years. It will translate, I'm afraid, into an immediate problem, as our friend John Bolton has said, because once the fuel is inside that facility, any attack against it would almost certainly result in radioactive material being contaminating a larger area. And that will, unfortunately, as I say, I think create further kind of protection for the Iranian nuclear weapons program, and why the next 8 days may well be decisive for Israel, and I think it should be for us as well.
All right, I want to come back to that 8 days. John Kilduff, you have already been writing and talking about your concerns that Iran is building up submarines in the Strait of Hormuz, and that this could have a terrible impact on oil prices. Now you get this Russian information today. What's your thinking?
I mean, it's almost as if we've taken our eye off the ball here. I mean, you talked about $200 oil. That was the number I put in my blog. If the Iranians were to successfully block the Strait of Hormuz, where 40% of the world's traded oil flows, and it's 90% of the Saudi oil, it's all the southern Iraq oil, it's the Kuwaiti oil. I mean, it's really, I think, a decent number. I don't mean to scaremonger or anything about it, but look, now they inaugurated 4 new submarines, bring it a total to 11. They are specifically made in country, in Iran, to navigate within the shallow waters of the Persian Gulf, of the Strait of Hormuz, to do exactly that. They are going to take us down with them at some point. That's the biggest fear. If Israel attacks, they will block the Strait of Hormuz. If we're successful in shutting off all their gasoline, I'm not surprised. I'm not sure they won't react and block.
Which we have. We've clamped down on their financial credit and their gasoline, imported gasoline. Is that not right?
To a degree. The new sanctions have achieved that. There's a situation with Turkey today where a Turkish ship didn't go to Iran because of the new sanctions, but the Russians are fully still selling to them. The Chinese, our other good friends, still very much selling to them, so they are still getting their gasoline.
Frank Gaffney, now you talk about the next 8 days. We'll round it up and call it a week. A UN response, a U.S. response, a European response, and perhaps, Frank, most importantly, an Israeli response to this news that Russia is providing the uranium fuel. What do you think? Can you care to make a guess about the outcomes here?
Larry, there's no indication that there would be any kind of response out of the UN. The International Atomic Energy Agency, that is its so-called watchdog, has been asleep at the switch for a long time. The United States government has, as P.J. Crowley at the State Department suggested today from his podium, really no problem with this. Just assume they didn't do it. But, hey, it doesn't have anything to do with nuclear weapons, he assured us, incorrectly. And the Europeans, I'm afraid, are unfortunately going to follow the American lead. They neither have the capability to do much about this other than perhaps add to economic sanctions, and that would be welcome, but it's late in the day. They don't have the military capability to even interfere with this program, I think. The Israelis do. Whether they have the means to destroy the Iranian nuclear weapons program, to take down the Iranian regime and the police state apparatus that enables it to control what are clearly the disaffected populations of Iran, I think is unclear. But they certainly have the means to stop this plant from coming online and perhaps at least disrupting some of the other aspects of these programs and control apparatuses. And I'm afraid we better hope they do it, because the alternative is a nuclear armed regime that believes it can achieve its theocratic objectives through the apocalypse.
But this is a military regime, Frank. This is now, I know the mullahs are the front men, but this is a military dictatorship regime, is it not?
It is being kept in power by the military apparatus of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, yes. Right. But it is at the titular level, at least, still very much animated by this kind of theocratic program that Khomeini basically imparted to them.
All right, John Kilduff, can you pull this together? Because, look, from a financial market and stock market standpoint, I guess the key variable is oil. Now, Frank is speculating about the lack of a clear response from the U.S. and the West. What about Israel? How does Israel figure into your calculations of the threat of a big oil spike?
Well, I think that it's very much in the cards here for the Israelis. They're not going to sit back and allow Iran to become nuclear armed. What this does, as has been pointed out here, is that this is a great educational training ground for the Iranian nuclear scientists and elite to learn really to the bottom line here how this all works. That's the other big fear. Right. Plus this deal, the calming effect of this deal is hinged upon the Iranians returning the diminished nuclear fuel rods back to Russia.
Do you believe that?
I don't believe that.
Does anybody in their right mind believe that?
It's fallacy.
Not going to happen.
It is not going to happen. Right. And even if they can't turn that into a nuclear bomb, a mushroom cloud type, it'll make a heck of a dirty bomb to land in a major city or someplace in Europe, and they'll let that go right out the back door, these guys.
Frank Gaffney, last word. We're a little bit out of time. George Will just wrote a hell of a column about Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, comparing him to Winston Churchill in his unyielding defense of freedom in Israel. Of course, Churchill opened the door to the Israeli state many years ago. Netanyahu's the key guy right now, is he not, Frank?
He is. My Jewish friends have an expression, Larry, from his lips to God's ears. I hope that he will, in fact, prove to be the Churchill we need at a moment like this. We don't have one in Washington, that's for sure.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Frank Gaffney and John Kilduff, very sobering stuff and very difficult stuff.